Thank you, Professor Jyotka and Professor Pai, for that all-encompassing kind of take on this. And a lot has been covered. So I hope I can say something which is different. And thank you for having me here to speak about this issue. And I agree with both Professor Pai and Professor Jyotka on many points, and I may not like to repeat them. But what Professor Jyotka said, I'm very, I'm cognizant of that, and I agree with it. Is that uh, this judgment? I mean, it's how does one even think about this judgment? Why does this judgment come up at this point of time? And what is the intention behind this judgment? One is this demand from bottom, from communities in the share of the pie. Because reservation seems like the only way through which upward mobility and social mobility is happening. And certain communities within the SC and ST, the subcaste within SC and ST, have transformed over 2-3 generations, and that seems as the only way subgroups can, overcome their disadvantage, their historic disadvantage. And so there is a bottom up demand also. But what is the intention behind this judgment? I'm very curious. So the judgment comes and then everyone starts talking about it. I refused to engage with this for a very long time. And then finally I started reading what people are saying. And it was learning for me because there are very good arguments for and against it. So as an academic, objectively you have to you try to evaluate it from both sides. Very difficult. We come up with our stand and with our politics and lineages, etc. I have just 3 or 4 points to make, and I'll make those, and then maybe have reserve my comment on the judgment at the end, and then maybe we can have a discussion or a question. So first thing is that, as Professor Jyotka ended his talk with, which is data. I'm an economist. I come from a background of analyzing inequality and poverty. And as he rightly said, that in the 90s, till 90s, there was no sub-classification or division of who are the poor, who are the marginalized by social groups. And when NSS unit data started coming out for analysis, that's when people started looking at who are the poor. And you find most of the poor are tribal, Dalits, OBC, Muslim. So they are disproportionate representation amongst the poor from these marginalized communities, and that's when the analysis begins at a large scale. But do we have these lists of subcaste at state level for reservation purposes? We really don't know the census. There was a 2011 socioeconomic caste census, but the Congress Party decided not to release it for some reason, for political reasons, of course. They just didn't know. They were afraid that it will lead to a complete, chaos, when the reality of who appropriates all these positions comes out. It will be a chaos. But that seems, in hindsight, seems a big mistake. Congress should have come out with that data. Until now, we don't have sub-classification data of the proportion of caste and subcaste exactly. If you really wanted to do this, then okay, let's divide the pie according to proportions and shares. We don't have the data, to be honest. On the other hand, we also don't have clear-cut data from the administrative public sector side, that if you have reservation in the legislative, executive, judiciary, and other government services, let's take a hard look of all the SC, ST, and OBC categories. Let's subclassify them by the subcaste and see who has got which share. And we're just saying that the dominant groups from within communities have cornered reservation. Is it based on any empirical fact? Please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there is any empiric reality to it. It will vary from state to state. We might be surprised at this variation. We don't have any idea amongst tribes at all. Which kinds of tribes are accessing reservation? We are just talking about it. Where is the hard data? Show me the data and I'll eat my words. So where is this coming from? This judgment is a big question. Where is this bench of 7 people? What is it basing its judgment on and suggestion on? Is a question to be asked, to my mind. And it says that there is a clear distinction between the group and the subcaste group. The judgment says there is heterogeneous groups. These are heterogeneous groups, and they are different, as Professor Jyotka and Ma'am has also said, that which is very true. There is a homogeneity to the groups and there is a heterogeneity to the groups. And we must be clear what is this distinction. What is homogeneous about these groups is their identity based on ascribed identities as ascribed by religious doctrine. You have the Varna system, you all know that, I don't have to go into it. So there is a homogeneity about untouchables, about Shudras, etc. And so the attitude and behavior of people towards them is common and homogeneous based on those principles. But if you look within, say, the Dalit community, SC community, or other communities, it is true that even within those communities you have hierarchies of caste. They follow untouchability within untouchables. It is true. Our data shows. We did a all India survey, and we found there is 5% amongst the Dalits say that they practice untouchability with their subcaste fellows. So that reality also exists. So nobody is denying that. But this is in the social sphere, this is in the civic sphere, this is in the customary sphere, right? And the resolution to this is seen through an end of the line policy, which is access to employment, and that will give you income. So economic empowerment and through education is the last in line of a policy which is ascribed for and which is an economic outcome. And we are talking about social realities within Dalit communities, and there are social realities within tribal and subgroups and other groups. So this distinction of homogeneity and heterogeneity, I think, is very important to be made, and we conflate these two when we are thinking of policies, to my mind. So where is the evidence of this economic discrimination being done by members of one dominant subcaste against another? They may not marry, they may practice untouchability, they may discriminate, there may be violence, but how does this lead to economic discrimination? Is there any evidence? Please show it to me. How does a Mahar discriminate economically with a Matang or a Teli or any like that? How does that happen? To my mind, the economic discrimination which castes face or caste groups face is when they are accessing land, assets, education, which the decision of how this access is going to get is not with them. It's with people who have these access historically for 3,000 years. When there is a SC position and there is an application, there could be people from various subcastes. But who is sitting there and deciding which SC to hire or not? And what is going on in their mind between, okay, there are these 5 subcastes of SC or STs who have come to this, and they create this distinction in their head. And that distinction comes from some division of cultural and social differences, cultural capital and social capital, which is also historic pre-market exclusion and discrimination, which is carrying forward. And I'll get to that in a bit. So reservation is a policy which is to give access to groups which were untouchable. So it doesn't matter if you are very educated, you manage to get education, you would not get a job or your children would not get admission because you are untouchable. So reservation gives you access into various public sector institutions because to transcend untouchability. It is not. It leads to education and employment, and therefore income and economic prosperity. But that is not the reason why a reservation is instituted. It is to mitigate a social evil which continues still. So this, as Professor Jyotka said, that it is incumbent on a state to bring in policies for a particular problem. So you have to have the right policy for the right problem, right? And here I think there's some confusion. And when it comes to individuals within subcategories, then you need different kinds of policies. Yes, within ST and SC there are jatis, and within jatis there is a lot of difference. But how do you overcome that difference? Through reservation? No, of course not. You have to target individuals and groups through land distribution, through helping them with education, through asset accumulation, through wealth accumulation. When they have this buttress of economic stability, in a generation or two, they will also be able to compete within the SC, ST, OBC quota. But if you just open up the quota for them, would they be able to access it? I doubt very much. So what you need to do, so intention, what is the intention of this judgment? If you want to really bring social justice to lower subcaste, then you actually need to do what they require, not just opening up subcaste. That's not going to ensure that their 2-3 generations slowly rise up. That's not going to help in a systematic intergenerational growth and development by just opening up a seat. It's not going to happen within a generation. So that's something to think about. And as Sudha ma'am said, I mean, even if some states went ahead with this implementation, I think it's just, they made the judgment, but I don't think they thought through this. This is just ludicrous, right? In Bihar there are 66 castes. In Punjab there are 38. How many positions would you need if you want to give one position to each subcaste within the SC? How many positions would you need for SC and ST? Do you think there will ever be that quantum of jobs available when you already have none found suitable and reservation seats being not fulfilled? So if you can fill them with people, if you say we need to pick one person from each subcaste, given the fact that they clear the minimum criteria, etc., all those technicalities have to be, you will have to massively increase the quantum of seats. For 2% jobs in the economy, it used to be 6 at my time. Recently, in the parliament, Mr. Azad has said only 2% of job. All this conversation is happening for 2% of job in the economy. And nobody is talking about the private sector. So I don't even know why we're talking about this. I mean, why aren't we talking about the private sector reservation? So what is the intention again in this minuscule thin slice of pie? You force people to now fight over that thin pie because you don't want them to ask for reservation in private sector. So you want to obfuscate the issue, you want to distract them, and you want to just create a situation where caste census may not happen because now we have given you a reservation or whatever, and the reality doesn't come out. It's just an eyewash to my mind. And so if the intention is to get the subcaste, and there are thousands of subcaste who are in miserable condition, they cannot even forget about accessing jobs through reservation, they cannot even access education for their children. If you really want to help them, how are you going to help them? Is reservation the tool? And that's the question, I think, here. And I think it's completely misplaced. I think the tool which needs to, or the policy measure which is being employed everywhere in the world for a long period of time, and I've written about it, I'm writing about it, is basically compensation and reparation. For 2,500 to 3,000 years of systematic exploitation of Shudras and Ati Shudras, using them as labor, using their productive efficiency and skill, and appropriating all the surplus up by the 3 communities on top. So for 3,000 years, if you have almost like slave-like conditions, semi-slave, actual slave, and untouchables, if you think that is wrong, that was wrong, and you banned untouchability and you brought in all this legislation, then where was the compensation for this wrong? If a wrong is done, if you evoke theory of justice or even Locke for theory of natural justice, if a wrong has been committed, then and it's a crime. It's a crime against humanity. So what is the punishment? There is no punishment. There is no compensation, and now you're supposed to start competing with the so-called oppressive. I call them the oppressive classes, not the upper caste, on merit, where they have 3,000 years of privilege being passed down, and you have nothing, and now you're supposed to show your social and cultural capital and compete. I think we are just, I think what we're missing the point. What needs to be talked about is reservation in private sector. There's a problem there also, because there's organized sector, there's an unorganized sector. How you're going to do it and go about it is a different question. There was a conversation of reservation private sector during UPA 2. The FICCI and CI came together and they sat, but they obviously refused. They said we'll do affirmative action and etc. Which, if you go to FICCI's website, they have a page on affirmative action, and if you click on it, there are these companies which claim to be following affirmative action, and what they've done, and they've done nothing. This one line: built a school, done this, done that. There's no data there to show. So it's all eyewash. So that is one and area which needs to be talked about. And compensation. I mean, if you provide land, you do land distribution. My recent paper, which is coming out in Oxford Economic Review, there I've calculated how much land exists in the country, government land, fallow land, etc., and how many Dalit families are there. Average is 4.5, and how much can be given in terms of average land to them. So if the land exists, you can have targeted transfer of money, like education bonds for their children, so that you can at least, so you can measure how much money, average money is required to send children to school, and they graduate. You transfer that money. You help them with business creation, wealth accumulation, etc. You compensate for the loss that was inflicted on them for such a long. It is the longest period in history. You look at any community which is marginalized, excluded, discriminated all over the world. You would not find a parallel to the ex-untouchable and the ex-enslaved caste in India. Their subjugation is the longest in history, and there is no compensation and talk of it, and we are just talking about this sliver of 2% of job in the economy, and I think that's just not going to cut it, unfortunately. um, so social hissedari, when everyone's talking about hissedari, that hissa we have to still get. That hissa which was taken away for thousands of years, that has to be first got. And by the second, third generation, when that has got, automatically people from subcastes which are really marginalized will automatically make the cut to come into. They may not even want reservation. They may not want to go to private sector. Reservations, because once you get in, अब मस्त है, because you don't really, I mean, government job है, security है, ये है, बस मिल जाए. That is the idea, right? You work or not work is a different question, but that is a very bad way of looking at your economic progress through this kind of a reservation. You want to build your strength from inside, economically, intellectually, educationally, and pass it on intergenerationally, so that you're both eligible to go into, if you want to be an IS officer, you go for that, and if you want to be in the private sector, you have that option, and you will still be discriminated, so you'll need reservation, because discrimination is class blind. It is based on your gender, caste, whatever. So I think I'll just stop here. These were the points I wanted to make. Yeah, thanks.